Sergio Woodruff's knuckles whitened as he gripped the steering wheel of his sleek black BMW. The 38-year-old criminal defense attorney sat motionless in his driveway, his piercing blue eyes fixed on the front door of his suburban home. He'd cut his business trip short, returning a week early after receiving an anonymous tip about his wife's infidelity. The words of the caller echoed in his mind, each syllable a dagger to his heart. As he finally stepped out of the car, the cool evening air carried an unfamiliar scent, a cologne that didn't belong to him. Sergio's jaw clenched, his suspicions growing with each step towards the house. He inserted his key into the lock, the slight tremor in his hand the only outward sign of the turmoil within. The door swung open, revealing Tricia lounging on the living room couch. Her eyes, wide with surprise and a flicker of guilt, met his. "Sergio, you're home early," she exclaimed, her voice a pitch too high. Sergio didn't respond. His gaze swept the room, noting the hastily straightened cushions and the lingering scent of that foreign cologne. Without a word, he headed upstairs, his footsteps heavy on the carpeted stairs. The bedroom told the story Tricia's lips wouldn't. Rumpled sheets, hastily smoothed but still bearing the imprint of two bodies. A man's watch on the nightstand, definitely not his. Sergio picked it up, examining it closely. An expensive piece, no doubt belonging to someone who wanted to impress. As he set the watch down, his mind began to race. Years of courtroom experience kicked in, his emotions giving way to cold, calculated thinking. He wouldn't give Tricia the satisfaction of an emotional confrontation. No, he would handle this with the same precision he used to dismantle witnesses on the stand. Sergio took a deep breath, steeling himself for the performance of a lifetime. He would play the role of the unsuspecting husband, all while gathering the evidence he needed to ensure Tricia would regret her betrayal. Over the next few days, Sergio maintained a facade of normalcy that would have impressed even the most discerning jury. He kissed Tricia goodbye in the mornings, made small talk over dinner, and even endured her attempts at intimacy with a rehearsed smile. All the while, his mind worked overtime, plotting his next moves. In his office, Sergio placed a call to Frank Delgado, a private investigator he'd worked with on numerous cases. "Frank, I need your services." "It's personal this time," Sergio said, his voice low despite the privacy of his corner office. Frank's gravelly voice came through the speaker. "Sure thing, Sergio. What's the job?" "I need surveillance on my wife, Tricia. I suspect she's having an affair," Sergio replied, the words tasting bitter in his mouth. "Damn, I'm sorry to hear that," Frank said, genuine sympathy in his tone. "I'll get right on it. You'll have eyes on her 24/7. With that piece in motion, Sergio moved on to the next. Under the guise of upgrading their home security, he installed hidden cameras throughout the house. The irony of using his technical skills, honed from years of reviewing surveillance footage for cases, to catch his own wife's infidelity wasn't lost on him. As the days passed, Tricia grew bolder in her deception. "I'm working late tonight," she'd say, pecking Sergio on the cheek before heading out, dressed in an outfit far too provocative for a marketing meeting. Sergio would nod, playing the role of the distracted husband perfectly. Later, he'd review the footage Frank sent him, his face a mask of cold fury as he watched Tricia and her lover, now identified as Cody Case, a junior partner at her firm, entering a hotel. At work, Sergio channeled his pain and anger into his cases. He threw himself into a high-profile defense, his arguments more cutting, his cross-examinations more brutal than ever before. His colleagues noticed the change, attributing it to professional drive rather than personal turmoil. "Sergio, that was incredible," Angie, his loyal paralegal, gushed after a particularly grueling day in court. "I've never seen you so focused." Sergio managed a tight smile. "Just doing my job, Angie. We can't let up now. Can you stay late to go over tomorrow's witnesses?" Angie nodded eagerly, always ready to put in extra hours for the firm's star attorney. As they worked into the night, Sergio found a small measure of comfort in the familiar routine of case preparation, even as his personal life crumbled around him. The neon sign of O'Malley's bar cast a sickly green glow over Sergio's face as he nursed a glass of scotch. Across from him sat Gerard Pace, his best friend since law school and now a respected detective. The bar was their usual haunt, a place where the lines between their professional worlds blurred. "So, you're sure about this?" Gerard asked, his voice low and concerned. Sergio nodded, sliding a manila envelope across the table. "See for yourself." Gerard opened the envelope, his eyes widening as he flipped through the photos of Trisha and Cody. "Jesus, Sergio. I'm so sorry, man." "Save it," Sergio said, his voice hard. "I don't need sympathy. I need a plan." Gerard leaned back, studying his friend. The Sergio he knew, always composed, always in control, was still there, but there was a new edge to him, a dangerous glint in his eye. "All right," Gerard said finally. "What do you want to know about this Cody character?" "Everything," Sergio replied, taking a sip of his scotch. "His history, his weaknesses, his dirty little secrets. I want to know it all." Gerard nodded, pulling out his phone. "I'll make some calls, pull some strings." "But Sergio, it's not too late to confront Trisha. Try to work things out." Sergio's laugh was cold and humorless. "Work things out? No, Gerard. She made her choice. Now she'll face the consequences." Over the next hour, Gerard's contacts came through. Cody Case's history unfolded before them. A string of workplace affairs, financial irregularities cleverly concealed, and a reputation for climbing the corporate ladder on the backs of others. As the information poured in, Sergio's mind whirred, fitting the pieces into place like a complex legal strategy. He could use this, all of it. "Thanks, Gerard," Sergio said, standing up. "I owe you one." Gerard grabbed his arm. "Just be careful, okay? Don't do anything stupid." Sergio's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Stupid? No. Calculated? Absolutely." The next few weeks saw a transformation in Sergio. The pain of Trisha's betrayal became fuel, driving him to reshape himself into a man with nothing to lose and everything to gain. Every morning, long before the sun rose, Sergio hit the gym. He pushed his body to its limits, each rep, each mile on the treadmill a step further from the man Trisha had betrayed. His once soft lawyer's physique hardened, becoming lean and muscular. At the office, he worked longer hours than ever before. Cases that once seemed unwinnable crumbled before his relentless assault. Plea deals were struck, evidence suppressed, juries swayed by his impassioned arguments. Angie noticed the change, her admiration for Sergio growing with each passing day. "You're on fire lately," she commented one evening as they prepared for yet another trial. "I don't think I've ever seen you this intense." Sergio paused in his review of witness statements. "Life's too short for half measures, Angie. We either give it our all or we don't bother at all." As Sergio remade himself, Trisha remained oblivious to the storm gathering on the horizon. Her affair with Cody continued, her lies becoming more frequent and transparent. One evening, as Sergio sat in his home office reviewing case files, Trisha entered, wearing a silky nightgown. "Honey," she purred, "why don't you come to bed? You've been working so hard lately." Sergio looked up, his eyes cold as they swept over the woman who had once meant everything to him. "I'm not tired," he said flatly, returning to his work. Trisha's face fell, confusion and unease flickering in her eyes. As she left the room, Sergio allowed himself a small smile. The pieces were falling into place. Soon, very soon, he would be ready to make his move. Sergio Woodruff sat in his office, his piercing blue eyes fixed on the computer screen before him. The glow illuminated his face, now leaner and more angular from weeks of grueling workouts. His fingers flew across the keyboard as he methodically emptied the joint accounts he shared with Trisha. He paused, a smile playing on his lips as he watched the numbers dwindle. This was just the beginning. With a few more keystrokes, he initiated the transfer of their assets into accounts only he could access. It wasn't about the money. Sergio had always been the primary breadwinner. This was about control, about cutting off every avenue of comfort Trisha might seek in the aftermath of her betrayal. Next on his list was a meeting with Veronica Steele, the city's top divorce attorney. Sergio had faced her in court numerous times, always respecting her ruthless efficiency. Now, he would harness that ruthlessness for his own cause. "Sergio," Veronica greeted him, her handshake firm. I must admit, I never expected to see you on this side of the table. Life's full of surprises, Veronica, Sergio replied, his voice devoid of emotion. Some more unpleasant than others. As they discussed strategy, Sergio laid out the evidence he had gathered. Veronica's eyes widened slightly, impressed by his thoroughness. You've certainly done your homework, she commented. This should make things interesting. Sergio nodded. I want this to be quick and decisive. Trisha doesn't get to walk away from this unscathed. Veronica's lips curled into a predatory smile. Oh, I can assure you she won't. With the legal groundwork laid, Sergio moved on to the next phase of his plan. He placed an anonymous call to the HR department of Trisha's firm, his voice disguised. I have information about unethical behavior involving one of your employees, Cody Case, he said, his tone concerned. There's a pattern of workplace affairs and some financial discrepancies you might want to look into. The HR representative's voice turned serious. Thank you for bringing this to our attention. We'll investigate immediately. Sergio hung up, satisfaction coursing through him. The dominoes were set. Now it was time to knock them down. Friday evening arrived, and Sergio knew Trisha would be meeting Cody. He waited until he heard her car pull out of the driveway before springing into action. He moved through the house like a man possessed, gathering Trisha's belongings. Designer clothes, shoes, jewelry, all went into large trash bags. He took no care with her possessions, stuffing them in haphazardly. In their walk-in closet, Sergio paused as his eyes fell on Trisha's wedding dress. The white fabric seemed to mock him, a symbol of vows so carelessly broken. With deliberate slowness, he lifted the dress from its hanger. His hands, steady in even the most high-pressure courtroom situations, didn't shake as he picked up a pair of scissors. The sound of tearing fabric filled the room as Sergio methodically slashed the dress. Each cut was precise, calculated, mirroring the way Trisha had torn apart their marriage. When he finished, the once beautiful gown was nothing more than tattered rags. Next, Sergio called a locksmith. The man arrived promptly, looking slightly confused at the urgency of the late-night call. I need all the locks changed, Sergio instructed. Immediately. The locksmith nodded, sensing the tension in Sergio's voice. Yes, sir. I'll get right on it. As the locksmith worked, Sergio gathered the trash bags and carried them to the front porch. He arranged them neatly, a final act of consideration for a woman who had shown him none. Finally, Sergio took out a piece of paper and a pen. His handwriting was steady as he wrote. I hope he was worth losing everything for. He placed the note atop the bags, held down by Trisha's now worthless wedding ring. With one last look at the home he had shared with Trisha, Sergio walked away. He drove to the city's most exclusive hotel, checked in, and ordered a bottle of their finest scotch. As he poured himself a glass, he allowed himself a small smile. The stage was set. Now, he would wait for the curtain to rise on Trisha's new reality. The night air was thick with the scent of alcohol and cheap perfume as Trisha stumbled out of Cody's car. Her laughter, too loud and slightly hysterical, cut through the quiet suburban street. Shoo, Cody hissed, his eyes darting around nervously. You want to wake up the whole neighborhood? Trisha rolled her eyes, fumbling in her purse for her house keys. Oh, lighten up, Cody. Sergio's probably passed out in his office again. He never notices anything anyway. As she approached the front door, Trisha's alcohol-addled brain slowly registered the scene before her. Piles of trash bags littered the porch, and the key wouldn't fit in the lock. What the hell? She muttered, confusion sobering her quickly. Her eyes fell on the note atop the bags. As she read Sergio's words, the blood drained from her face. No, 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 she whispered, panic rising in her throat. Cody sauntered up behind her, his arrogance palpable. What's the problem, babe? Forgot your key? Wordlessly, Trisha thrust the note at him. Cody read it, his smug expression faltering for a moment before he forced a laugh. So what? The bastard figured it out. Big deal. You're better off without him anyway. Cody wrapped an arm around Trisha's waist, pulling her close. Why don't you come stay with me? We can celebrate our freedom. Trisha shrugged off his embrace, her mind racing. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. Sergio was meant to be oblivious, content in his workaholic bubble while she enjoyed the best of both worlds. I need to talk to Sergio, she stammered, pulling out her phone. Cody's face darkened. Are you serious? After all we've been through, you're going to run back to him? Trisha ignored him, her fingers shaking as she dialed Sergio's number. It went straight to voicemail. She left a series of increasingly frantic messages, each one more desperate than the last. As the night wore on, Trisha's panic grew. She alternated between crying and raging, while Cody became increasingly impatient. Look, he finally snapped. Either come with me or don't. But I'm not standing out here all night while you have a meltdown. Trisha stared at him, suddenly seeing the selfishness that had always lurked beneath his charming exterior. With no other option, she gathered what she could carry and got back into Cody's car, leaving the wreckage of her marriage behind on the porch. The next morning, Trisha and Cody arrived at Sergio's office, a united front of righteous indignation. They burst through the door, ready for a confrontation, only to find Sergio calmly sitting behind his desk, as if he'd been expecting them. "Ah, Trisha, Cody," Sergio said, his voice cool and controlled. "I was wondering when you'd show up." Trisha stepped forward, her face a mask of anger and fear. "Sergio, what the hell do you think you're doing? You can't just throw me out of my own home." Sergio raised an eyebrow. "Your home? I think you'll find that legally, it's my home. But please, have a seat. We have much to discuss." As they sat, Sergio reached into his desk drawer and pulled out a thick manila envelope. "I took the liberty of having these drawn up," he said, sliding divorce papers across the desk. "I think you'll find everything in order." Cody leaned forward, his face flushed with anger. "Now wait just a minute. I wasn't speaking to you." Sergio cut him off, his voice sharp. "In fact, I think you'll find it's in your best interest to remain silent, Mr. Case. Unless, of course, you'd like to discuss the ongoing ethics investigation at your firm?" Cody's face paled, the implication clear. He slumped back in his chair, suddenly looking much less sure of himself. Trisha's eyes darted between the two men, realization dawning. You planned all this," she whispered. Sergio's smile was cold. "I merely ensured that actions had consequences, Trisha. Something you seem to have forgotten about." As Trisha flipped through the divorce papers, her shock turned to outrage. "This is ridiculous. You can't possibly expect me to agree to these terms. I'll ruin you, Sergio. I'll tell everyone what a cold, unfeeling bastard you really are." Sergio leaned back in his chair, unfazed by her outburst. "By all means, Trisha, feel free to try. But before you do, consider this. Who do you think people will believe? The respected attorney known for his integrity, or the unfaithful wife caught in a tawdry affair with a junior colleague?" He paused, letting his words sink in. "Oh, and you might want to consider the potential legal ramifications of making false accusations. I'd hate to have to add a defamation suit to these proceedings." Trisha's face crumpled, the fight draining out of her as the reality of her situation became clear. Beside her, Cody shifted uncomfortably, already calculating his exit strategy. Sergio stood, buttoning his jacket. "I suggest you both take some time to review those documents. My lawyer will be in touch to schedule our next meeting." As Trisha and Cody left the office, shell-shocked and defeated, Sergio allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. The game had only just begun, and he intended to win. The following weeks saw Trisha's carefully constructed world crumble around her. News of the affair spread through their social circle like wildfire, fanned by the flames of gossip and schadenfreude. At a charity gala she had once co-chaired, Trisha found herself on the outside looking in. Women who had once fawned over her now turned their backs, whispering behind raised hands. Men who had flirted harmlessly now avoided eye contact, fearful of being associated with her scandal. "I'm so sorry, Trisha," simpered Amanda Whitmore, wife of Sergio's law partner. "But I'm afraid we'll have to ask you to step down from the committee. We have a certain image to maintain, you understand." Trisha nodded numbly, watching as Amanda glided away to join a group of women who had once been her closest friends. She caught snippets of their conversation. "Can you believe the nerve? Poor Sergio. He deserves so much better." Meanwhile, Cody was facing his own fall from grace. The ethics investigation at their firm had gained momentum, fueled by anonymous tips and suddenly loose-lipped colleagues. Mr. Case, the head of HR said gravely, "We've uncovered some discrepancies in your expense reports, and there are multiple complaints of inappropriate behavior. I'm afraid we're going to have to suspend you pending a full investigation." Cody's face, once smug and self-assured, now showed the strain of a man watching his career implode. "This is ridiculous," he blustered. "It's all a misunderstanding. I can explain everything." But his protests fell on deaf ears. As he was escorted from the building, Cody's mind raced. He needed damage control, and fast. And the easiest target for blame was Trisha. That evening, Cody arrived at his apartment to find Trisha waiting, her eyes red-rimmed from crying. "Cody, thank God you're here. I don't know what to do. Everyone's turned against me, and Sergi." "Save it," Cody snapped, brushing past her. "This is all your fault, you know? If you hadn't been so obvious, so careless, none of this would have happened." Trisha recoiled as if slapped. "My fault? You were the one who pursued me, who said we deserved to be happy." Cody laughed bitterly. "Happy? Look around, Trisha. Does this look like happiness to you? I'm about to lose my job. My reputation is in tatters, and for what? A middle-aged housewife having a midlife crisis?" His words cut deep, each one a knife twisting in Trisha's gut. She stared at him, seeing for the first time the true face of the man she had risked everything for. "Get out," Cody said, his voice cold. "I need to figure out how to salvage what's left of my life, and I can't do that with you hanging around." Trisha left, her world spinning. She had lost her husband, her lover, her friends, and her social standing, all in the space of a few weeks. As she drove aimlessly through the city, she found herself outside the home she had shared with Sergio. She parked across the street, watching as Sergio arrived home. He looked different, fitter, more confident. As he entered the house, Trisha was struck by a wave of longing for the life she had so carelessly thrown away. Making a sudden decision, she got out of her car and approached the house. Her hand trembled as she rang the doorbell. Sergio answered, his expression impassive as he took in her disheveled appearance. "Trisha," he said, his voice devoid of warmth. "What are you doing here?" Trisha broke down, years of pent-up emotions pouring out. "Sergio, I'm so sorry. I made a terrible mistake. Please, can we just talk? Maybe we can work things out, start over." For a moment, something flickered in Sergio's eyes, perhaps a memory of the love they had once shared. But it was gone as quickly as it appeared, replaced by a cool detachment. "There's nothing to work out, Trisha," he said calmly. "You made your choices. Now you have to live with the consequences." "But I love you," Trisha pleaded, reaching for him. Sergio stepped back, his voice firm. "No, Trisha. You loved the idea of me, the successful husband who provided you with a comfortable life while you did as you pleased. But that's over now. You chose Cody, remember? I suggest you go back to him." "Cody left me," Trisha whispered, her voice small and broken. Sergio's laugh was without humor. "Of course he did. Men like Cody always do when things get tough." He paused, studying her for a moment. "I'd say I'm sorry, Trisha, but the truth is, I'm not. You brought this on yourself." With that, he closed the door, leaving Trisha alone on the porch. The same porch where, weeks earlier, she had found her life packed into garbage bags. As Trisha walked away, shoulders slumped in defeat, she didn't see Sergio watching from the window. His face was a mask of calm resolve, but inside, a storm of emotions raged. He had loved Trisha once, deeply and completely, but that love had been burned away by her betrayal, leaving behind a man forged in the fires of pain and determination. Sergio turned away from the window, his mind already moving on to the next phase of his plan. The divorce proceedings would begin soon, and he intended to emerge victorious, just as he did in the courtroom. Trisha had underestimated him, had taken his devotion for granted. Now, she would learn the true cost of her betrayal. As he settled into his home office to review case files, Sergio allowed himself a small smile. He was Sergio Woodruff, respected attorney, a man of integrity and strength, and he was just getting started. The imposing courthouse loomed before Sergio Woodruff as he strode up the steps, his tailored suit a armor of professionalism. Behind him, a few paces back, Tricia scurried to keep up, her once confident demeanor now reduced to nervous glances and fidgeting hands. Inside, the courtroom buzzed with anticipation. High-profile divorces were always a spectacle, but this one promised to be particularly juicy. Sergio took his place at the plaintiff's table, his posture relaxed yet alert. His eyes briefly met those of his attorney, Veronica Steele, who gave him a slight nod of reassurance. Across the aisle, Tricia huddled with her lawyer, a young man named Brian Hodges. His suit was ill-fitting, his tie slightly askew, a stark contrast to Sergio's polished appearance. Tricia leaned in, whispering urgently to Brian, who seemed overwhelmed by her rapid-fire instructions. As the judge entered and the proceedings began, the difference in preparation became glaringly apparent. Veronica's opening statement was a masterpiece of legal rhetoric, painting a clear picture of Tricia's infidelity and financial misconduct. She wove together the evidence Sergio had meticulously gathered, creating a narrative that left little room for sympathy towards Tricia. Brian's rebuttal was weak in comparison. He stumbled over his words, trying to portray Tricia as a victim of a loveless marriage. But his arguments fell flat in the face of the mountain of evidence against her. As the proceedings continued, Tricia's attempts to claim alimony were systematically dismantled. Veronica presented bank statements showing suspicious transfers, credit card bills from lavish hotel stays, and even receipts for expensive gifts, all linked to her affair with Cody. "Your Honor," Veronica said, her voice crisp and confident, "Mrs. Woodruff's claim for alimony is not only unwarranted but insulting. The evidence clearly shows that she has been misappropriating marital funds for her extramarital activities. To award her additional support would be to reward her deceit." Tricia's face reddened, a mix of anger and humiliation. She turned to Brian, hissing, "Do something. Aren't you supposed to be defending me?" Brian shifts uncomfortably, knowing he's outmatched. "Mrs. Woodruff, please. I'm doing my best, but the evidence. I don't want to hear about the evidence." Tricia snapped, loud enough for nearby spectators to hear. "I want you to earn your fee and get me what I deserve." The judge's gavel came down hard. "Mrs. Woodruff, control yourself, or you'll be held in contempt." Tricia slumped back in her chair, shooting daggers at Sergio with her eyes. But Sergio remained impassive, his focus on the proceedings unwavering. The climax of the day came with Cody's testimony. As he took the stand, his usual smug demeanor was replaced by a nervous energy. His eyes darted around the courtroom, refusing to meet Tricia's gaze. Veronica approached him, her smile predatory. "Mr. Case, please tell the court about the nature of your relationship with Mrs. Woodruff." Cody swallowed hard. We had an affair. It started about a year ago." "And who initiated this affair?" Cody's eyes flicked to Tricia, then away. "Tricia did. She was always flirting at the office, suggesting we work late together. One night, she just came on to me." A gasp rippled through the courtroom. Tricia half rose from her seat, her face contorted with rage. "You lying bastard," she shouted. "You pursued me. You said I deserved better than Sergio." The judge's gavel came down again. "Mrs. Woodruff, this is your final warning. One more outburst and you'll be removed from this courtroom." As Tricia sank back into her seat, Cody continued his testimony, painting her as the aggressor in their affair. He detailed how she'd encouraged him to falsify expense reports to cover their trysts, how she'd promised to leave Sergio for him. With each word, Tricia's case crumbled further. By the time Cody stepped down from the stand, the sympathy in the room was palpable, not for Tricia, but for Sergio, the wronged husband who had endured such betrayal. Throughout it all, Sergio remained a picture of composure. When it was his turn to testify, he spoke clearly and calmly, presenting his side of the story without embellishment or emotional appeal. He didn't need to play for sympathy. The facts spoke for themselves. As the day's proceedings came to a close, the outcome seemed all but certain. Sergio and Veronica exchanged satisfied glances, while Tricia and her lawyer huddled in desperate conversation. Outside the courtroom, reporters clamored for statements. Sergio strode past them, offering only a dignified no comment. Trisha, on the other hand, tried to push her way through the crowd. Her mascara streaked from tears of frustration. "This isn't over," she shouted at Sergio's retreating back. "You'll regret this, Sergio. I'll make sure everyone knows what kind of man you really are." But her threats fell on deaf ears. Sergio walked away, his head held high, knowing that victory was within his grasp. As the divorce proceedings neared their conclusion, desperation clawed at Trisha's insides. She paced the floor of her rented apartment, a far cry from the luxurious home she once shared with Sergio. Her phone pressed to her ear. She pleaded with her brother, Wallace Hanna. "Wally, please. You have to help me. Sergio's going to take everything." Wallace's sigh crackled through the speaker. "Trish, I told you when this all started. You made your bed. Why should I get involved now?" "Because you're my brother." Trish's voice rose hysterically. "Family is supposed to stick together. I need you to find something, anything, that we can use against Sergio. There has to be dirt somewhere." There was a long pause before Wallace responded. "Fine. I'll see what I can dig up. But Trish, don't get your hopes up. Sergio's always been straight as an arrow." Trish's relief was palpable. "Thank you, Wally. I knew I could count on you." As the days passed, Wallace began his reluctant investigation into Sergio's past. He called old contacts, scoured public records, and even hired a private investigator. But at every turn, he came up empty-handed. Instead of dirt, Wallace uncovered a trail of good deeds. Pro bono work for domestic violence victims, anonymous donations to children's charities, mentoring programs for at-risk youth. With each discovery, Wallace's respect for his former brother-in-law grew. Meanwhile, Trisha's world continued to shrink. Her phone rarely rang anymore, her social media accounts eerily quiet. The few times she ventured out, she was met with cold shoulders and whispered comments. One afternoon, as Trisha was drowning her sorrows in a bottle of wine, a knock at the door startled her. She opened it to find Cody standing there, his appearance a shadow of his former polished self. "Trisha," he said, his voice hoarse. "Can we talk?" She let him in, noting the desperation in his eyes. Cody paced the small living room. "I'm finished, Trisha. The ethics board. They're going to disbar me. I've lost everything." For a moment, Trisha felt a flicker of sympathy. Then she remembered his betrayal in the courtroom, and her heart hardened. "What do you want from me, Cody? In case you haven't noticed, I'm not exactly in a position to help anyone." Cody turned to her, his eyes pleading. "I thought maybe we could try again. Start over somewhere new. We could support each other." Trisha stared at him, disbelief turning to disgust. "Are you serious? After everything that's happened, after you threw me under the bus in court, you think we can just start over?" "I know I messed up," Cody said, reaching for her hand. "But we had something real, didn't we? We can get that back." Trisha jerked away from him. "Get out," she hissed. "Get out and don't ever come back. You're pathetic, Cody. A coward who can't face the consequences of his own actions." As she slammed the door behind him, Trisha felt a strange sense of clarity. For the first time, she saw Cody for what he truly was. Not the dashing, successful man she'd fantasized about, but a weak, selfish coward. The next day, Wallace arrived at Trisha's apartment, a thick folder under his arm. His face was grim as he sat across from his sister. "I've got good news and bad news, Trish," he said. "The good news is, I found something. The bad news is, it's not going to help you. In fact, it's probably going to make things worse." Trisha leaned forward, hope and dread warring in her chest. "What is it, Wally? What did you find?" Wallace opened the folder, spreading out documents on the coffee table. "Sergio's been doing pro bono work for a domestic violence shelter. Not just legal aid, but financial support too. He's been using his own money to help victims start new lives." Trisha's face fell. "How is that bad news? There has to be an angle we can use, right? Maybe he's embezzling funds or—" "Stop it, Trish." Wallace cut her off sharply. "Just stop. Do you hear yourself? You're talking about trying to smear a man who's dedicating his time and money to helping abuse victims. And for what? Because he had the audacity to stand up for himself when you cheated on him? Trisha recoiled as if slapped. Whose side are you on, Wally? The side of decency, apparently, Wallace retorted. He stood up, gathering the documents. I'm done, Trish. I can't be part of this anymore. You need to take a long, hard look at yourself and the choices you've made. As he headed for the door, Wallace paused. Oh, and one more thing. I found evidence of some assets you've been hiding. Offshore accounts, some creative accounting with your personal expenses. I'm turning it all over to Sergio's lawyer. You can't do that, Trisha shrieked. I'm your sister. Wallace looked at her sadly. Yes, you are. And because you're my sister, I'm going to give you some advice. Accept what's coming, Trish. Take whatever settlement Sergio offers and use it as a chance to start over. Be better. With that, he left, leaving Trisha alone with the realization that she had well and truly lost everything. The courtroom was packed on the day of the final ruling. Sergio sat at the plaintiff's table, as composed as ever in a crisp charcoal suit. Beside him, Veronica Steele radiated confidence. Across the aisle, Trisha slumped in her chair, her appearance a far cry from her once polished self. As the judge entered, a hush fell over the room. Judge Miranda Holbrook, known for her no-nonsense approach, surveyed the courtroom before speaking. After careful consideration of all evidence presented, this court is ready to issue its ruling in the matter of Woodruff versus Woodruff. Trisha straightened in her seat, a last flicker of hope in her eyes. Sergio remained still, his expression neutral. This court finds overwhelmingly in favor of the plaintiff, Sergio Woodruff. The defendant, Trisha Woodruff, is found to have engaged in marital misconduct through her extramarital affair. Furthermore, her attempts to claim alimony are denied based on evidence of financial misconduct during the marriage. Judge Holbrook continued, detailing the division of assets. With each pronouncement, it became clear that Trisha was being left with little more than she had entered the marriage with. The judge's tone grew stern as she addressed Trisha directly. Mrs. Woodruff, this court takes a dim view of your actions both during your marriage and throughout these proceedings. Your attempts to malign Mr. Woodruff's character have been found baseless and potentially libelous. You would do well to accept this ruling and move forward with your life. As the judge's gavel fell, finalizing the divorce, a weight seemed to lift from Sergio's shoulders. He shook hands with Veronica, thanking her for her excellent work. As they gathered their things to leave, Sergio caught sight of Trisha. She stood alone, tears streaming down her face as the reality of her situation sank in. For a brief moment, their eyes met. Trisha's gaze held a mixture of anger, regret, and dawning realization of all she had lost. Sergio's remained impassive, offering neither forgiveness nor condemnation. He simply nodded once, then turned away. As Sergio exited the courtroom, he was met with a sea of supportive faces. Colleagues, friends, and even a few of Trisha's former social circle were there, offering congratulations and words of support. Among them was Angie, his loyal paralegal. Her eyes shone with admiration as she approached. Congratulations, Sergio. You handled this whole ordeal with such grace and strength. Sergio allowed himself a small smile. Thank you, Angie. I couldn't have done it without the support of the firm and your hard work. As they chatted, neither noticed Trisha watching from the shadows, her face a mask of bitterness as she witnessed the respect and admiration Sergio commanded. Months passed, and life moved on. Sergio threw himself into his work with renewed vigor, his reputation only enhanced by the dignified way he had handled his personal troubles. His pro bono work expanded, and he found a deep sense of satisfaction in helping those truly in need. One evening, at a celebration for his promotion to partner at the firm, Sergio found himself in conversation with a striking woman he hadn't met before. Sergio Woodruff, he introduced himself, extending his hand. Sylvia Reinhardt, she replied, her handshake firm and confident. I'm a neurosurgeon at Metro General. Your colleague Mark was just telling me about your recent work with the domestic violence shelter. It's incredibly admirable. As they talked, Sergio found himself drawn in by Sylvia's intelligence and wit. For the first time since his divorce, he felt a spark of interest, a reminder that life still held possibilities. Their conversation was interrupted by the managing partner calling for a toast. As Sergio excused himself to join his colleagues at the front of the room, he caught Sylvia's eye. She smiled warmly, and he found himself looking forward to continuing their conversation. Later that night, Sergio sat in his home office, contentedly reviewing notes for an upcoming case. His eyes drifted to a framed note on his desk, the same one he had left for Trisha on that fateful night. I hope he was worth losing everything for. Once a reminder of betrayal, the note now served a different purpose. It was a testament to his strength, a reminder of the adversity he had overcome. Sergio smiled, feeling truly at peace for the first time in years. He was Sergio Woodruff, respected attorney, valued colleague, and a man who had faced betrayal and emerged stronger for it. As he turned back to his work, Sergio felt a sense of anticipation for what the future might hold. He had weathered the storm and come out the other side, ready to embrace whatever challenges and opportunities lay ahead. The chapter with Trisha was closed. Now, it was time to write a new one. Epilogue. 5 years had passed since the dust settled on the Woodruff divorce, and the consequences of that tumultuous period continued to ripple through the lives of all involved. Trisha Woodruff, once the picture of suburban success, now lived in a small, run-down apartment on the outskirts of the city. The meager settlement from her divorce had long since dwindled, frittered away on unsuccessful attempts to recapture her former lifestyle. Her days were spent working as a low-level administrative assistant at a local insurance company, a far cry from her previous role as a marketing executive. The social circle that had once fawned over her now treated her as a cautionary tale. Invitations to galas and charity events, once a staple of her calendar, had dried up entirely. On the rare occasions she ventured to her old haunts, she was met with cold shoulders and not-so-subtle whispers. Trisha's attempts to rebuild her life romantically had been equally unsuccessful. Her reputation preceded her, and any potential partners quickly distanced themselves once they learned of her past. The loneliness of her new reality was a constant, bitter reminder of what she had thrown away. In her darkest moments, Trisha would find herself staring at old photos of her life with Sergio, the weight of her mistakes crushing down on her. She had tried reaching out to him once, a desperate email sent late one night, seeking forgiveness or at least closure. The response, polite but firm in its finality, had made it clear that Sergio had moved on completely. That email remained unopened in her inbox, a digital reminder of the bridges she had burned. Cody Case's fall from grace had been even more dramatic. Disbarred and blacklisted in the corporate world, he had been reduced to working as a telemarketer, his smooth talk now directed at selling dubious products to unsuspecting customers. The confidence that had once oozed from every pore was gone, replaced by a nervous energy that seemed to repel everyone around him. His attempts to reconcile with his family had been met with skepticism and mistrust. His wife, who had stood by him initially, finally left when the full extent of his infidelities and financial misdeeds came to light. She had taken their children and moved across the country, leaving Cody with nothing but supervised visitation rights. Cody's nights were often spent in seedy bars, drowning his sorrows and regaling anyone who would listen with tales of his former glory days. But as the years passed, even those stories began to ring hollow in his own ears. He had become a cautionary tale in legal circles, his name mentioned in ethics classes as an example of how quickly a promising career could be destroyed by poor choices. In stark contrast, Sergio Woodruff's life had continued on an upward trajectory. Now a senior partner at his firm, he had built a reputation as one of the city's most formidable attorneys. His pro bono work with domestic violence victims had expanded into a full-fledged foundation, providing legal aid and support to those in need. Sergio's personal life had blossomed as well. His relationship with Sylvia Reinhardt, the neurosurgeon he had met at his partnership celebration, had deepened over the years. They had married in an intimate ceremony 2 years after their first meeting, their connection built on mutual respect, shared values, and a deep understanding of each other's dedication to their professions. Together, Sergio and Sylvia had become a power couple in the city's philanthropic circles. Their annual charity gala for the Domestic Violence Foundation was the highlight of the social calendar, drawing support from the highest echelons of society. The event was always bittersweet for Sergio, serving as a reminder of how far he had come since the dark days of his divorce. Angie, Sergio's once loyal paralegal, had flourished under his mentorship. With his encouragement, she had pursued her law degree while continuing to work at the firm. Now a junior associate, she was quickly making a name for herself as a sharp and dedicated attorney. The admiration in her eyes when she looked at Sergio had transformed into deep respect and gratitude for the role he had played in her professional development. Gerard Pace, Sergio's detective friend, had risen through the ranks to become chief of detectives. He and Sergio remained close, often collaborating on cases that straddled the line between criminal and civil law. Their friendship, forged in the crucible of Sergio's personal crisis, had only grown stronger over the years. Wallace Hanna, Trisha's brother, had cut ties with his sister after the divorce proceedings. His decision to prioritize integrity over family loyalty had initially been difficult, but as the years passed, he found peace in knowing he had made the right choice. He had channeled the experience into his own personal growth, becoming an advocate for ethical business practices in his industry. As for the framed note that had once sat on Sergio's desk, I hope he was worth losing everything for. It had long since been retired to a box in the attic. Sergio no longer needed the reminder of his past pain. Instead, his office now displayed photos of his work with the foundation, his wedding to Sylvia, and the various awards he had received for his legal and philanthropic work. One crisp autumn evening, as Sergio and Sylvia strolled hand in hand through the park near their home, they passed a bench where a solitary figure sat hunched over. It was Trisha, though the years had not been kind to her. For a moment, Sergio felt a flicker of an emotion he couldn't quite name. Not regret or longing, but perhaps a quiet acknowledgement of the strange twists of fate. Sylvia squeezed his hand, bringing him back to the present. As they continued their walk, Sergio reflected on the journey that had brought him to this point. The betrayal that had once threatened to destroy him had instead been the catalyst for a life far richer and more fulfilling than he could have imagined. As the sun set over the city skyline, Sergio Woodruff walked towards his future, the echoes of the past fading with each step. He had paid the price of betrayal, but in doing so, had gained a life of purpose, love, and unwavering integrity. It was a price that, in the end, had been worth every penny.
This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comment section. Thanks for your time. If you enjoy the story, please subscribe to this channel. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.